Welcome to the Deep Dive Media Day for 25 teams, and we'll give our respects to 2 teams that made the finals and bits for more teams that we will cover in the next days until preseason. It's that time of year again. Media Day frenzy is upon us, and we are cutting through the noise to extract the most essential nuggets of knowledge. Today, we're focusing on 2 teams at, well, opposite ends of the competitive spectrum. The mindset of the defending champions, the Oklahoma City Thunder, and a team facing a massive, necessary pivot in identity, the Indiana Pacers.
That's the mission, yeah. We're going beyond, the boilerplate quotes. We're analyzing the psychological challenges, the strategic adjustments, and the internal aspirations straight from the source. We're looking at OKC trying to establish a dynasty, the Pacers trying to redefine themselves without their engine, and then we'll hit those, viral sound bites that really tell you where the league's personality sits right now.
Okay, let's unpack this first big narrative then, the Thunder. Reigning champions, which is fantastic, but history is brutally unforgiving. We've seen the last 6 champions fail to even make it out of the second round the following year. That target is huge. What was their approach? How are they handling the inevitable complacency and the psychological weight of defending a title?
Yeah, they are walking a tightrope, you can tell. And their messaging was carefully calibrated. On one hand, they want to maintain that 0-0 mentality, meaning, last year's done, everyone starts equal. But strategically, they spent a lot of time defining what they don't want to be. They don't want to be guardians of the past.
Guardians of the past.
Yeah.
Okay, what exactly does that phrase imply in the context of, an NBA champion?
Right. It means refusing to just rest on the championship formula that worked last May. Becoming a guardian of the past means playing conservatively, kind of relying on old habits, and maybe fearing failure because you have something to lose now. OKC's focus seems clear. They are not defending, they are continuing to build. They want to avoid that emotional paralysis that often sinks repeat bids.
J-Dub, Jalen Williams, he emphasized that continuity of pursuit perfectly, didn't he?
Mm-hmm.
He said a lot of people talk about title defense, but we want to be offensive too, emphasizing they're still building toward the future and chasing greatness, not just protecting what they earned.
Exactly. And this is where Shai Gilgeous-Alexander's comments were really fascinating because they confirmed this multi-year dynasty focus. When he was asked about the long-term vision, he didn't talk about repeating this year. He said it would suck to lose the 2026 NBA championship.
Wow. Yeah.
That isn't just confidence. That's setting a minimum expectation for a sustained dynastic run over the next, 3 seasons.
That totally reframes the entire mission then. They aren't worried about the immediate target. They're worried about whether they can maintain the standard needed to win 2 years from now.
Precisely. And the reason they feel comfortable having that kind of multi-year focus is the internal development, which naturally brings us to Chet Holmgren.
Okay, yeah, here's where it gets really interesting. The Chet Holmgren hype train. OKC essentially ran back the exact same roster, banking heavily on internal growth. But isn't that putting immense pressure on a young player? How do they manage that expectation?
Well, they aren't hiding from it. They're embracing it. SGA dropped what might be the quote of Media Day, maybe the whole week, saying Chet is not even a fraction of the player he's going to be.
Fraction. That's huge.
Yeah. He called him a player made for basketball, whose growth the universe will be forced to watch. That is just extraordinarily high praise for a player entering his 3rd season.
That's bold, but, if you step back and look at the financial strategy, this internal growth, it's basically the equivalent of a massive off-season acquisition for them.
Exactly right. They get a star-level jump without spending cap space or, trade assets.
Right.
Chet's growth is their major off-season move. His ability to fill specific skill gaps like rim protection, offensive versatility at his current contract level, that allows them to maintain financial flexibility while still getting better. And Chet's mindset, from what we heard, makes it easy to bank on this.
Yeah, he responded to SGA's high praise with, a high level of maturity, it seemed. He framed his growth not as a checklist, but as a never-ending process. He talked about focusing on attacking every day with the right intentions, and crucially, being willing to fail. That willingness to explore every avenue, to experiment, makes his high ceiling easy to bank on, as you said. He's focused on the journey, not just the destination.
And that is the key difference, isn't it, between a developing player and a maturing star? The willingness to fail in pursuit of greater skill, rather than playing safe just to maintain a stat line. The message from OKC is clear. The only target they seem to recognize is their own long-term potential.
Okay, so if OKC is worrying about staying hungry and maintaining internal development, the Indiana Pacers are facing, the opposite challenge. creating a new identity completely out of necessity.
A total forced pivot, yeah.
Yeah.
The Pacers are without their star player, Tyrese Haliburton, who basically defines their hyper-fast, almost chaotic identity.
Their whole brand was pace. Yet at Media Day, the coaching staff, the veterans, they kept repeating the standard is the standard.
Hmm.
So what does this all mean for their style of play? Are they still going to try and run?
That quote is critical to dissect, I think. It seems to be about maintaining the effort standard, the culture standard, the physicality, the competitive drive, the accountability. It's not necessarily about the exact tempo standard. They know they had to tweak things tactically. Aaron Nesmith actually gave the clearest indication of the immediate shift. They will play at Andrew's pace, not Tyrese's pace.
Which locks Andrew Nembhard in as the starting point guard for the foreseeable future then. That means we're going from a lightning-fast break, high-volume three-point offense to something likely more controlled, more half-court structured, maybe more defensively focused.
Absolutely. The volatility goes down. And interestingly, the sources indicated Coach Carlisle is reportedly a bit wary of the projected starting lineup, suggesting he sees potential flaws, particularly concerning the defensive load on players like Ben Mathurin, who will now need to guard the ball more than usual because that structure has changed.
Okay.
This isn't just about pace. It's about shifting defensive responsibilities onto younger wings.
Right, so Pascal Siakam's leadership suddenly becomes even more critical in this new structure.
Massively critical. And Siakam, he views the team's success as an ecosystem thing. That was his phrase. He's reinforcing that he isn't just going to take over as the sole number one option. He's going to be that central stabilizing figure, keeping the culture afloat while the team adjusts to a different offensive rhythm. That veteran voice is just essential when a team loses its emotional leader like Haliburton.
And speaking of Tyrese, how are they managing his time off the court? It's got to be hard enough for an injured star to sit, let alone watch the team fundamentally change its identity because he's gone.
Yeah, he apparently plans to travel extensively with the team, even for preseason games, specifically to remain involved and, interestingly, learn from a coaching perspective, which is great for his long-term growth. But you mentioned the emotional weight. He admitted the recovery process is hard. He said he still finds it too hard to go back and watch the games they lost last year.
Wow.
That shows you the genuine emotional investment and that drive that's fueling his recovery.
That's a great insight into the athlete's psyche, definitely. Any surprising moments regarding the locker room hierarchy? Like who's stepping up?
Well, Tyrese named the expected guys, Nembhard and McConnell, as leaders. But he surprisingly included Obi Toppin.
Obi, okay.
Yeah, acknowledging the growth in his game and maturity.
And Obi delivered on the humor front, too, which is always necessary during the stress of Media Day. He talked about the game slowing down for him. I'm not running around with my own head cut off like a chicken.
Huh, yeah. That quote, while funny, is actually a pretty great summary of the change in Indiana, right? They are moving away from running around with their heads cut off, maybe, and toward a more purposeful, Nembhard-controlled environment. That's a massive cultural and tactical swing.
Okay, let's transition now to the highlights reel, the quick hits that generated noise across the league. Starting with the masters of the casual soundbite.
Nikola Jokic. As usual, pure gold. After losing some familiar veteran faces, guys like Jeff Green, Russell Westbrook left the team. He stated simply that he needs to find some new friends.
That's peak Jokic, isn't it? The man just wants his teammates to be fun to hang out with, not just excellent basketball players.
Totally. And he also jokingly dismissed turning 30 soon, saying they'll see in 24 days if he's still playing at the same level. That self-deprecating humor, it masks his intense focus, but it helps keep the atmosphere light in that locker room, which is crucial for a team with championship hopes.
Then there was Lonzo Ball at his first Media Day with the Cavaliers after being around the league for 8 years, playing in Cleveland multiple times. He dropped a hilarious and slightly alarming admission. He didn't even know Cleveland had water.
It just, it highlights how players live in that bubble, right? Airports, arenas, practice facilities. You spend 8 years associated with the city, and you don't realize it borders a massive Great Lake. It's funny, but also kind of a reminder of the transient nature of NBA life.
Ant-Man, Anthony Edwards, he delivered again too. He named Jaden McDaniels and Josh Okogie as the teammates he misses most, calling them his brothers. Always good value. But the most memorable part was the detailed coaching advice he apparently received from Michael Jordan about post-up moves.
That was the real nugget. Jordan told him to use the top part of his back instead of his ass.
Right. So specific.
It's a specific tactical masterclass. Using the top of the back gives you better leverage and balance, allowing for cleaner separation, and it prevents those offensive fouls often called when players stick their rear end out too much. It's a tiny detail, but it shows the level of mentorship available to players like Edwards.
Okay, moving to the more serious business, we have to talk about Kawhi Leonard and the Aspiration Company allegations.
Mhm.
Kawhi is notoriously private, yet he addressed this massive legal issue pretty much head on.
Yeah, this was a huge shift in approach for him. It suggests he's prioritizing controlling the narrative over maintaining his usual silence. He stated very clearly he did no wrongdoing and invites the investigations. He confirmed the company owed him more than $7 million. And he strongly suggested the company went bankrupt due to fraud involving the owner or perhaps others.
Why the sudden public transparency, though? Especially regarding such a large financial and legal matter. Seems unlike him.
It's likely a preemptive legal strategy, right? To clearly delineate his involvement and shift the focus back to the team. By inviting the investigation and pointing to potential fraud by others, he's essentially saying, look, I am the victim here, not the perpetrator. He stressed his focus remains entirely on the season, clearly aiming to avoid this becoming a daily locker room distraction.
Makes sense. Finally, shifting to the Warriors, Steph Curry spoke on the unique and frankly kind of awkward situation with Jonathan Kuminga missing media day due to ongoing contract negotiations.
Yeah, this is a classic example of that conflict between the business side and the brotherhood side of the NBA. Curry acknowledged the business difficulty, but expects Kuminga to return as a professional. Crucially, though, Curry dismissed the agent's public talk of conditional commitment, stating unequivocally that he only listens to his teammates, not agents.
That signals the clear hierarchy in the Warriors culture, doesn't it? Business is business, but once you step into the gym, the outside noise stops. It's a reminder that no matter what the agent says on Twitter, Curry holds the most relational power in that organization.
It's definitely a power move. He's basically telling Kuminga, look, the external leverage is irrelevant. Your standing here depends on how you act with us. It's an effective way to cut through all that contract clutter.
So we covered the determined, history-defying mindset of the reigning champions in Oklahoma City, the challenging identity shift in Indiana forced by injury, and the biggest, wildest, and most consequential stories from around the league's media days.
Yeah, and if we connect all this to the bigger picture, you notice how the conversation shifts, right? From OKC trying to maintain internal development to face that external pressure, to the Pacers dealing with external issues like the injury, forcing a total internal shift in roles and pace. The NBA narrative is never static, even during these, quote, quiet parts of the calendar. These media day quotes really define the challenges ahead for these teams.
Definitely. So as you process these competing narratives, maybe think about this. Which team, the champion, relying purely on internal growth to establish a dynasty like OKC, or the shorthanded team forcing new leadership and a whole new identity like the Pacers? Which one will face the tougher, more defining test of their identity this season? Thank you for listening. Please comment, like, subscribe if you're on YouTube. Spotify, please leave 5-star review. And until next time, remember that NBA World has no off season.